We ran an article which pointed out that David Cameron said that he would never break his allegiance to Israel. That was above everything. And so we said to him, can you explain to us, Mr. Cameron, how you can be the Prime Minister of Britain, which should be your ultimate responsibility, and in fact what you're saying is that your primary responsibility is to Israel. I believe that what we are seeing, well, I'm sure what we're seeing in the British Parliament at the moment is utter treason, and we need to expose these people for what they really are, which is the spawn of international arms dealers. And of course, what do international arms dealers like? And it's very simple. They like wars and bloodshed because that's how they make their profit. So to now see this I can't really describe him in the right way, this horrible man, Cameron, calling on America to start yet another war to start millions of deaths. I hope that the average American citizen out there, and certainly the people listening to this show, start to think to themselves, we don't need American deaths in order to satisfy Mr. Cameron's personal ambitions.
It's amazing, and I mean, you talk about, you know, we don't vote for people to be influenced by Israeli lobbyists. It doesn't matter what country they come from. Russian lobbyists, any kind of outside influence whatsoever, it's a violation of sovereignty. It's the complete opposite of representational democracy, and it's got no business being in our country. I mean, this Lorna Fitzsimmons of this BICOM group, she bragged it. I mean, these quotes just keep coming. Quote, public opinion does not influence foreign policy in Britain. Foreign policy is an elite issue. So that again goes to the core of what you're saying with these people. Outsiders coming in and directing our foreign policy at odds to what the British people actually want.
Yep.
Switching gears, Brian, though,
yeah.
And I want to get onto the child abuse issue in a moment, but we had this big story a couple of months ago. What do you think about YouTube pulling down the video of the protest at Birkenhead where members of your group attempted to arrest the judge due to a, quote, government removal request? That's what YouTube said, and they pulled the video.
Well, just to set the scene for listeners, a few months ago, in a totally peaceful demonstration, 600 people on the streets up in the Midlands in UK. Basically, a judge was arrested for running an unlawful court. Now, of course, the police did what we would expect of the police, which is that the police ended up defending the judge. He wasn't harmed, he wasn't assaulted anyway, but he was simply informed he was being put under arrest by the public because he was running an unlawful court. Now, you're quite right, because video footage of that was taken down with a statement that it was the government taking it down. This is highly significant, and I personally believe it's wonderful, it's excellent, because what it has shown, and people understand the meaning, is the government is terrified of what people can do when they've got proper knowledge and understanding of what's happening in their country. So the British government was so terrified of what 600 peaceful protesters did in Birkenhead near Liverpool that they had to remove the video. Of course, on the day itself, despite 600 people being on the streets, about 40 police vehicles, I don't know how many hundred police with dog handlers and some riot police in the background. On the day, there was not a single report in any of the British mainstream media. The BBC didn't cover it. None of the ITV, the independent channels, covered it. There was simply one local radio station that published what had happened. Now, this was obviously a media clampdown. And why would you need a media clampdown? Because the government is terrified of the truth coming out about the corruption in British courts, and the fact that ordinary people are now starting to move to sort the problem out themselves. So that's what it's about.
As you said, I mean, it just represents to me how much of a blind panic they're in, that they have to remove this video from the internet. And their excuse was, oh, you can't show footage of a court in session. I mean, the court wasn't even in session, and most of the video was of the protest outside. So again, that was just an excuse. And I mean, doesn't it show the fact that they're petrified of people understanding how, in this example, Roger Hayes, with the whole council tax issue, people can beat them at their own game. And I mean, that really goes to the heart of why they're so afraid, because if everyone else learns about how people are being successful in fighting it, then it's rapidly going to get out of control from their perspective.
Well, I think, Paul, that I know the Alex Jones show is pushing out a lot of good information for people about what is actually happening, and we are trying to do the same. But I think something very, very interesting has happened in the last 6 months. You can now feel, you can see, if you're looking in the right place, that we are starting, this is all the people, thousands, millions of people who are starting to wake up. We are now starting to drive our own governments, because they also know people are waking up, and that is why we're suddenly seeing the rush through of all this very hard-hitting, draconian legislation to clamp down on American people and to clamp down on British people. They are now going flat out to introduce the dictatorships in Britain and America, and the reason they're having to rush is because of the rate we are now exposing what they're doing. And the beauty is, the more they do and the faster they do it, the more obvious it is to people that something is very wrong. So I think we, as well as getting out the message of all the terrible things that are happening at the moment, we've also very much got to focus on the positive things and where we're having successes. And one of the things that we know in Britain is we can't get justice, we can't bring treasonous politicians to justice, because the courts are utterly corrupt. And one British MP called John Hemming, who came to an event we put on the weekend before last, was happy to stand on stage and be filmed saying that the British courts and judiciary are corrupt. So we've got to deal with these corrupt courts and these corrupt judges if we are going to get democracy and proper law and order restored in our countries.
And that tipping point is going to be more likely the more the number of insiders, like the MP you just mentioned, come out and speak out against that. But I mean, readers of the UK column are well aware of, switching gears for the next topic, the fact that you've covered this serial state kidnapping of children for years now. And for our American audience, if you think the CPS is bad in the United States, then this certainly rivals it. We're talking about no court order, barely any legal process in many cases. Police, from the stories I read, literally hunting down cars in the middle of the night to snatch babies from parents. I mean, Brian, we've read cases in the media about, taking so-called obese children from parents, and the media will report on that at length. But what you've reported in the UK column is something that can only represent a deliberate assault on the family unit by the state with these kind of child kidnappings, child abduction, and eventually child abuse. I mean, tell us why this is happening in the UK and why it's so prevalent.
Well, you've made that very easy for me, because all we have to do is bring listeners back and get them focused on Saul Alinsky in particular, and also Gramsci, who was an Italian Marxist. You don't need to read huge books. You can go on the internet and just Google both of them. And what you will find these men talking about is is getting in to destroy traditional democracies, to destroy traditional communities by getting in and destroying families, and particularly Christian families. And their tactics are instead of guns and bombs and bullets, you actually infiltrate into the establishment, the system itself, and then you do the damage from the inside. But the family unit, the heterosexual family unit, was always their primary target, because if you can break up mothers and fathers, mums and dads, and you can take the children, then those children can be groomed straight into the new political ideology. And what we've got to do is put the scale of this. Remember that Britain is a much smaller country than America, but we're dealing with, at the moment, with over 60,000 children who are actually have been taken away from their parents. The children are being taken inside courts where there are no juries, where the press is not allowed to be. So these are secret courts. Their star chamber is the correct word in Britain for them. They are secret courts. The evidence brought in is falsified. Psychiatrist reports, psychologist reports contain lies, false information. They are factually incorrect. And it doesn't matter what the parents do inside the court, their children are taken from them. And again, we know that the government in UK is beginning to get very fearful of the speed at which the information is coming out, because in the last 2 days, a gentleman called David Norgrove has published his report on family justice, and he's actually saying that the whole process should be speeded up. In particular, he's saying that if a couple breaks up, the father should not have automatic access to his own children. And he's also saying, this man, that grandparents who actually get involved when couples break up and say, we can look after the children, that those grandparents are actually doing damage to the children, and they should be cut out. Now, David Cameron, let's stay focused on David Cameron, because this man is so dangerous. David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Britain, is backing a report which says that fathers should be denied access to their children. This is the work of Gramsci, and of course David Cameron is not a conservative in any shape or form. He is a subversive. I personally regard him as a domestic extremist, and what he is doing is implanting Gramscian ideology. So this is why we're having such an amazing attack on families, and thousands of children are being taken away, because if we can break down the family, then the state can claim the children. It's as simple as that.
And I mean, this goes to the very heart of broken Britain, which is this phrase we hear constantly. Most people don't realise that it's been deliberately broken. If it's broken, then somebody's going to put it back together again, and you can bet that that's going to be the state. And a shining example of what it leads to is what we witnessed in the UK back in August, which was the riots. Now, I'm guessing, Brian, that came as a completely expected to you. I mean, your newspaper's been predicting widespread social unrest. I predicted it in articles I wrote 2 years ago. So I'm guessing that the riots, which started in London and spread across major cities back in August, didn't come as a surprise to you.